And that's what's so cool about this moment, is that we are not limited by where we grew up or where we're living. We can get inspired by and learn from anybody anywhere in the world. And we're evolving in all of these different ways that just unlock innovation faster, unlock our potential faster.
Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast, hosted by Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race, and brought to you by Wild Health.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
Get fully personalized healthcare based on your DNA, biometrics, and blood work with Wild Health, the official healthcare provider of Spartan. Go to wildhealth.com and use the code Spartan10 to save 10%. Become the best version of yourself in just 3 minutes a day with Heroic, the new social training platform built to help you be more energized, productive, and connected today. Join the movement at heroic.us. Use the code Spartan20 to save 20%.
Joe De Sena, CEO and founder of Spartan and the Spartan Up podcast. I got a special one for you today. We've got Gina Bianchini. This is Superwoman, Catwoman, and who was the other? Oh, Wonder Woman, all combined into one. You were the original entrepreneur in residence at Andreessen Horowitz. Didn't Andreessen Horowitz do Netscape way back when?
Yeah.
How did they find you to bring you in, and when was that?
Oh, well, it was in 2010, but it was because I had founded my company prior to Mighty Networks with Mark. So he and I started a company together.
And that company, for those listening or watching, was called Ning.
Yes.
N-I-N-G, right?
Yes.
And Ning was, somebody brought me Ning around 2011 and said, hey, Joe, for this Spartan thing you're doing, it's all about community. And you're stupid, Joe, because you have everybody on Facebook and you need to create a Ning community. And because I'm more of a Flintstone than a Jetson, I wish we knew each other back then, I couldn't figure it. I just couldn't deal with it. And Facebook was so easy back then. So here I was, like so many companies, and we got all our people into Facebook only to find out that we can't talk to them. So that was a huge mistake on my part.
Well, look, you were not the only person. And, sometimes there are waves and tsunamis of like, this is the thing, and this is the thing you got to do, and this is why you got to do it. And what I've observed in my career is that sometimes questioning those waves is not a bad idea.
Yeah. How'd you come up with the idea? How'd this happen?
The thread for me is always been about not just communities based on people that you grew up with or people that you're friends with, but how do you build a community around an interest or a passion or a goal or a lifestyle or a challenge that you want to take on? And so originally at Ning, we started it to be a programmable platform for social applications, which basically meant that developers could take the software that we were building, almost like APIs, and build what they wanted into new social applications. But what we found was that it was actually normal people, like people that didn't know how to code. Today, we call it the no-code movement, that wanted to create their own social network. We put it out in February 2007, and it was overnight, just took off. And what I learned from that experience is, one, people are awesome. People's creativity is awesome. People's ability to come together in some new and interesting ways is always going to surprise any of us. And when you pull people together and you have a platform where there's the opportunity for creativity, where it is no code, so you don't have to know how to code in order to build it out, you can see things emerge that from the same platform are totally different communities. So a community for something health and wellness related versus for a career versus for parenting versus for other transitions in people's lives. And so that's where I fell in love with not just the communities being created, but the people creating them. So today at Mighty Networks, we call the folks who create Mighty Networks and create communities, or today, even beyond that, online courses and memberships and other things that we support at Mighty, we call them hosts because they're hosting a community, and a lot of the same things that we are as human beings, that how we come together, whether it's in a party, whether it's around a workshop, whether it's around something that we care about. People are awesome, Joe. Like, they are awesome.
It's a very Italian thing to do. You and I are both Italian. We talked about it before we got in, right? Italians love community and food, and
talking very loud.
And I was just thinking, like, don't tell anybody, but I've been watching some Netflix shows for about a half hour before I go to bed. And whether it's that Viking show or whatever it is, like, I tend to watch shows that are very muddy and dirty because of Spartan. But they all had communities back then, 1,000 years. Like, that's the thing, right? We congregate, and then I guess back then we would attack each other, the two different communities, but we do all come together under some common bond.
This is not a provocative statement, but community is universal to the human experience. We are put on this earth not to just be by ourselves, but the way that we survive and the way that we have evolved and innovated and figured things out is by coming together in communities. And I would, if you think about today, I would argue that communities are the single most powerful force for any of us to achieve the results and transformation that we want to have in our lives, to basically be able to successfully navigate transitions, to be able to set a goal and achieve it. So much of this moment is about consuming and creating the conditions by which we're supposed to just sit back and watch videos or scroll through endless amounts of content. And what I know to be true, and what I see every day across literally over 200,000 Mighty Networks and many Ning networks before this, is when you bring people together, the ability to achieve results, achieve transformation, do things differently, just gets so much easier. And ultimately do things that we didn't think were possible, because community makes things easy that when we try to do on our own, it's really hard.
Well, I'll give you a few examples because I've been doing this 22 years. I've been bringing people together and creating endurance communities, Spartan type stuff, Tough Mudder type stuff, and I've been arguing forever because I experienced it myself. I happen to be a very motivated individual. I wake up on my own. I do my workout on my, like, it just has to happen 7 days a week. But if you showed up at 6 a.m, all of a sudden we both work out harder. That's just what happened. Like, there's no implied competition. We just work out harder and then if a third person shows up, we all take it up even a little bit further. I watched my wife and her sister go to do a Spartan race, and it was going to be like, oh, the sisters haven't seen each other and they're going to do this race. As soon as the gun went off, it became a competition. But that wasn't the plan. They were going to hold hands the whole time, right? So we all push a little harder. We do a little more when we're together. The other interesting thing throughout these 22 years that applies to everything you said is, hey, Joe, and this is 45 countries, we want you to build a permanent course. And my instinct very early on was, doesn't work. And it was like, well, why doesn't it work? It's going to be great. It's going to be polished and shiny and signs, but there's nobody there. When there's nobody there, it's the 8,000 people that show up together. That it's not the obstacles, right?
Right.
My question for you is, because I think we have the same passion, which is, I want to change lives, and I want to get people healthy. But I'm fighting instinct, and instinct is I don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
Like, no one wants to be uncomfortable, right? And so what community tools, what could I use? I mean, certainly Facebook in those early days, and I'm sure Ning and I'm sure Mighty Networks, seeing a photo, if I saw Gina had just finished a Tough Mudder with Spartan, and I see that photo, and like I feel a little maybe I feel FOMO, right? Like I missed out, and she's doing like. So I would love, even after this call, to figure out how, if our missions are aligned, which they clearly are. How do I go from 1.5 million people a year to 15 million? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do we 10x it?
So what I love about that is, one, you are absolutely right that there is no, the answer is simple, but simple is not necessarily easy to 10x, the number of folks. But when you start to look at, it's not just the photo, it's also it's the behind the scenes. Like, how do you train? How are you training? How are you building the practices? And the thing that community provides is it provides identity. And so, I'll share my own experience here I grew up playing sports. I was an All-American field hockey player. I played in college. And I have always sort of worked out, after graduating. And, even when I was in business school, I was a spinning instructor because I just got super into it. It was really fun and awesome. And about, I would say, 1.5 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to I was working out like 4 days a week, but I was like, I'm going to work out every day. And I knew that if I worked out every day for 30 days, I was going to build a habit, because when you build a habit, you build a practice, it takes roughly 30 days. You know this better than anybody. And what happened after that is something that I think the book Atomic Habits does such a great job of capturing is, I don't even work out I don't work out because I want to or I don't want to, or that it's hard and I want to do something hard. I work out because I'm a person who works out. My identity is I work out every day. And when I don't work out now, I'm just like, I don't feel right. Like I don't feel right. So the power of community is it accelerates that ability around identity where you become an athlete. I am an athlete. And what does an athlete do? An athlete works out every day or works out 5 to 6 days a week. And so I don't know that it's just the photo. It's the photo, but it's also the behind the scenes. And I always think about it as the power of a community is that, when you wake up at 5 a.m. and you're like, do I want to work out today? And you look down at your phone and there's all of these messages from people that got up just like you are at that moment. And they actually got up and they put on their workout clothes and they went and worked out. What is the likelihood that you're going to stick with those first 30 days? It goes up dramatically. And then after those 30 days, the fact that you are a part of a community that has this identity as an athlete or as a healthy person or as somebody who cares about X, Y, or Z things. Sometimes I even think about it as like, I'm a person that actually believes in results. I believe in realizing my full potential. That identity is so powerful in terms of changing lives.
Well, it's interesting, right? We have a race we put on. It's our craziest race, most difficult, called a death race. And it will start on the phone.
That sounds really positive. Yeah.
And the message to folks is you may die, right? And so there's a certain group among us that are, if we're going to row across the Atlantic or climb Everest, we're in, right?
Right.
And so that's the death race community. And early on when we were putting on the race, 99% of the people quit. And it was kind of a waste of time for me and my family because we don't make any money with the event. And it's like, I'm awake for 72 hours and it's just a nightmare. And so one year I said, not only do you have to pay to get in and you got to beg your way in, but I also want you to post in a local newspaper to your community, to your point, that you're going to be doing this. And all of a sudden, grandmothers stopped dying the day before. And because all the excuses went away because now they were on the hook with their community.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, it's certainly the accountability piece is there, but it's also like, well, shoot, if everybody else is doing this, I can do this too. And sometimes it's like, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it too.
You're going to like this. So in Sparta, Greece, we have an event once a year. And I had the opportunity to stand at the ruins, which is not very much in Sparta because they just didn't believe in building big temples and everything.
Right.
And I was with the Cambridge professor who spent his entire life studying Sparta. And I said, give me some things. Like how did they make this work? And he said, community. He said, they believed that the only way they could live like this, that they could work this hard and all be rowing, and that everybody had to be bought in, because if they want, it just would not work otherwise. And so they were maniacal about that. Like, hey, go to Athens if you're not in, because you are going to distract. Like, this is hard.
Right.
Like,
well, and what I love, if not only is that right, is when you fast forward it thousands of years to this moment, the other thing that I think is so powerful about the technologies that now exist for community. Now, again, I would argue the community can exist with, two people, 2 tin cans, and a piece of string. That it's not about the tools. That is that fundamental human desire for community. The tools just make hopefully things easier and make them more valuable faster in ways that are important and meaningful.
So you've heard of intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding, but is it right for you? We're going to talk about that. I'm Dr. Matt Dawson with Wild Health, Spartan's official healthcare partner. We know that ancestrally we weren't eating all the time like we do today. And now science has proven there's a lot of benefits to that, from improving lipids, blood pressure, decreasing cardiovascular risk, decreasing inflammation, and just helping you live longer in general. But how do you do it, and is it right for you? If you're pregnant, still growing, or a competitive athlete, it may not be right for you if you're consuming a lot of calories and need those calories. If you're not in one of those categories, give it a shot. You can start small, just not eating between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. with a 12-hour window. If that feels okay, extend it to 16 hours, maybe don't eat until lunch. How are you going to feel not eating? Probably pretty good. Most people report their energy levels are good, and you may be actually mentally sharper. What can you have in that period? Basically anything without calories. Tea, coffee, those things are great. Actually, there's some evidence that coffee may actually enhance the fast, so don't feel like you have to skip your morning coffee to do this. Give it a shot, see how you feel. Everybody responds differently, but you're probably going to feel great and get some significant health improvements from time-restricted feeding.
Wild Health, the official healthcare provider of Spartan. Today's episode is also sponsored by Heroic. Heroic is a social training platform that empowers you to show up at your best and conquer every obstacle in your life. Heroic is the only app that combines ancient wisdom, modern science, practical tools, and the best of behavioral design technology into a single platform that's built to help you move from theory to practice to mastery. Designed by Brian Johnson, who you've heard on this show, and the same company that created Slack, Tinder, and Uber Eats, Heroic's 3-minute commit plus hit practice will make you positively addicted to actually doing all the things that you know are the best for you. Join the movement at heroic.us and use the code Spartan20 to save 20%.
The thing that I think is so fascinating about this moment is that, hosts of communities, and I think you absolutely do it. You lay out the challenge, you lay out the journey, you lay out the framework. But the power of this moment is that as each of us add our stories to that framework, to that journey, to that challenge, it becomes this incredible 3-dimensional thing. So what I love is that we're making this move from what has been online, for example, all about content. It's like my content, like I post content to social media. If I'm building an online course, it's about my videos and my PDFs. And instead, what we're now seeing is an evolution to, in your case of the Spartan races or any of the big challenges, it's, well, how do all of the individual participants show up? How did they train? what worked for them? What is that group that they've brought together to do this hard thing together? And I think that the different stories and the different flavors and the different, I think about it as moving from something so flat with content to something that is three-dimensional and vibrant, and that basically is the manifestation of just an infinite number of variations on a framework or on a journey or on a path. And that's what's so cool about this moment, is that we are not limited by where we grew up or where we're living. We can get inspired by and learn from anybody anywhere in the world. And so what happens then is that, what is that flavor of training that you're doing? What are the goals that you have? And the faster, better, more effective we can make it for any of us to be able to not only set higher and higher goals for ourselves or bigger and bigger challenges, but then also find that flavor of training or that group of people that we identify with in pursuit of those goals, in pursuit of those results, in pursuit of that transformation. That's where the magic happens.
I think what you're saying is, if we go back to ancient Sparta, where we didn't have these tools and we had a methodology that was working to keep us fit and as strong warriors or healthy, now they could share that with the Ukrainians and some groups down in South America, and all of a sudden we're elevating everybody at once.
That's exactly right. And we're evolving in all of these different ways that just unlock innovation faster, that unlock creativity faster, unlock our potential faster.
Yeah, my boys wrestle, and we just moved 100 days ago to Florida because there's a school down here with an unbelievable wrestling program. My daughters are in the soccer program.
Oh, that's great.
And with wrestling, I'm sure with field hockey, when you're around the best players, the best wrestlers, you all of a sudden, I'm watching it happen before my eyes. They're literally having to get to that level, or you either rise to the occasion or die, I guess.
That's right.
So imagine if all of a sudden folks not living here had access, then all of a sudden everybody's getting better.
Even though I just railed against content, have you seen the new Tony Hawk documentary?
I haven't seen. I heard somebody just said I have to watch it. It's
really outstanding. And there's I don't know if you've heard of the framework that was invented by it's a military framework called the OODA loop that was invented by a guy named John Boyd, who was a fighter pilot. And it's all about how you observe, you orient, you decide, and you act. And then you observe again. And the faster that you can get through that OODA loop, the better you are. You can't lose, basically. And what an OODA loop essentially does is allow for these small incremental adjustments. So as long as you are adjusting faster than your opponent, as long as you are adjusting to your goals, which again is why community is so powerful when it comes to helping each and every one of us realize our full potential, is because we can learn not only from our own successes and mistakes, but we can learn as well from the successes and mistakes of other people. And so coming back to Tony Hawk, the thing that is so fascinating about watching this documentary is that you can see in the moments of utter triumph, as well as failure, that he's just keeping at it and adjusting a little bit every time. And so for his ability to do I think it was is it the 900? It's either the 700 or 900. I don't know how many times you're going around. I think it was the 900. You could see the way that he was doing it was every time he fell after trying the trick, he adjusted a little bit and he adjusted a little bit and he adjusted a little bit and nails it. It took him 9 times in that particular competition, but he nailed it. And when I think about just, again, why this is such a fascinating, awesome moment is, one, we do have so many people that we can learn from, but it's watching our peers and other people apply those frameworks in their own ways and in their own combinations that each and every one of us can learn faster, in some respects more easily, but in other respects, learning more easily just means that we get to take on bigger and bigger challenges.
I mean, I could talk to you for months here on this thing. What's the story? Let's give us the scoop. Since you're out in Palo Alto, you probably rub shoulders with all the big shots and Elon Musk. Why does he want Twitter? Why did he get Twitter?
It's an interesting question. I am almost uninterested in my own hot take on all of this because I think so much is left to figure out. So much is left to see. I think, though, the interesting thing for all of us that use social media is it's a great reminder that when you are building something, build it on the strongest foundation that you can. Build out your own corner of the internet, as opposed to always just participating, in the larger social media platforms, because the larger social media platforms are going to see more and more and more chaos. And the thing that's really interesting to me is chaos does not help us realize our full potential. Focus does. Flow does. Being able to know where to focus one's time, effort, attention. And that's why I'm such a passionate believer in smaller or more narrowly defined communities that are really about how do you go deeper with people who want the same things out of a particular interest or are curious about the same topics that you are. Because I think that it is a more valuable experience. I think that it is a more interesting experience. And I think that what is interesting to me is watching my peers, people I went to college with, people I went to business school with, people that I worked with. They have been wildly successful. And there is something really attractive to them right now about social media that is about creating and seeding chaos. And that doesn't, there's no politics associated with it. It's just chaos. It's like, I'm just going to do things that are about being a trickster, about being, you can't tell what I believe. And I just think it's, in many respects, just going to be more and more a waste of time and human potential relative to the other models that are emerging, whether that's newsletters or whether that's small private communities or whether that's audio rooms. There's so many incredible people building incredible things that I think the challenge is almost like that additional noise, that additional chaos.
Last question. How if you do that, and that makes sense. I mean, when you have a dinner party, right, you're bringing over people that have similar interests, you get along or whatever, as opposed to a chaotic thing. So I get that. But you also could end up in an echo chamber where it's all people that believe in the same exact thing, just talking to each other, right? So how do you deal with that? So
first and foremost, if you look at the historical models, the echo chamber is actually okay. I would actually argue that the problem is not echo chambers. It's when echo chambers clash. It's when there's this expectation that the beliefs of my community, that I have to rationalize them against the beliefs of your community. And so one, I think that the fact that there are focused communities in the world is actually how, as human beings, we are meant to live our lives. And certainly meant to live lives that have meaning, that have purpose, that have connection, that have belonging. Now, what I will say, though, is really interesting is it's also around what are the echo chambers built on. So today they are built on, in a lot of social media, they're built on politics or philosophical things that it's like, if you don't believe what I believe, then you are fundamentally evil. And it's everybody is doing this, like, pointing fingers.
But by the way, it's not unique to now. When I think about that Viking Netflix show,
that's exactly right.
Right? Like,
or if you think about the pamphlets of the founding father era, it's like those pamphlets were mean, man.
Yeah.
And they were vicious. Now, here's the thing that I do think is magical. When you start to think about creating new areas of focus that change the conversation. So whether that is races, whether that is your health, whether that is an interest in gardening or the idea to explore the cosmos. Like when you start to think about new passions, new interests, new things that you're curious about, your political beliefs actually become less important. Now, again, this is heresy at this moment because so much of, I think about the last 15 years as an ongoing 24/7 continuous A/B test by people, whether it's government bad players or just people who are passionate believers in whatever it is they're passionate believers in. But we have found the language that divides us in ways that feel like you can never come back from those divisions. And that's the dangerous part. The echo chamber part is not necessarily in and of itself the problem. The problem is the A/B testing of how do we create language that is going to guarantee you and I can never be friends, that we can never find common ground. And that is really the unfortunate and sinister aspect of this moment in time. Now, I believe the answer to that is breaking it up by finding and creating new communities around different kinds of interests, different kinds of passions, different kinds of goals that require us or provide us the opportunity to find common ground with people that we may disagree with on other topics. And I think that's actually, something I am perfectly happy going on the record and being a heretic about, that there is not one right way or wrong way.
You'll appreciate this. When I moved to Asia to launch Asia for us 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I remember the first race we put on, it was in Malaysia. And I get out there and there's all different sizes and shapes people. There's women in burqas. They're out in this. And I'm like, oh my God, we may have completely differing opinions on all these things, but we are crawling under the barbed wire together.
That's exactly
and I think that we are Spartans together, right? We might be gardeners together, is your point.
That's exactly right.
Right?
I think that what we are missing is that same powerful ongoing A/B test that's designed to divide us, to drive engagement. That's essentially what it is. What and how can we use technology to find what is that common ground? And it may be very, very small, and it might be a sliver today. But what is that way that we have shared values, shared humanity? And I think that it is going to be one of the biggest challenges of our time.
I remember I went to this Afghan restaurant, and never been to an Afghan restaurant, and after meeting the owner of the restaurant and eating the food, it was like we had this common thing going on with the food. And it was no longer, even though we were at war with Afghanistan, right. It was like, what are you talking about? We're the same people. We both like this chicken and rice dish.
That's exactly right.
Right?
That's exactly right.
So, you're awesome. I mean, I could talk to you for months here on this thing. How do people find you and Mighty Networks? Just mightynetworks.com?
As a matter of fact, it is mightynetworks.com. And the main place that I post to is Twitter. I'm just Gina B at Twitter.
Do you know someone who needs a little help staying motivated, staying informed, getting or staying mentally and physically resilient? We're here 3 days every week with a mix of content to help you stay strong. From mindset to nutrition and everything in between. Listen every Tuesday to hear Joe De Sena, Spartan Race founder and CEO. And the rest of the week, join us for DECA, Endurance, and Classic episodes. See you next time. Become the best version of yourself in just 3 minutes a day with Heroic, the new social training platform built to help you be more energized, productive, and connected today. Join the movement at heroic.us. Use the code Spartan20 to save 20%. Maximize energy, optimize nutrition, and improve performance with Wild Health. Personalized precision healthcare built for Spartans. You'll get a personalized health plan based on your DNA and biometrics and the support of a team of health experts. Sign up at wildhealth.com with the code Spartan10 to save 10%.